Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 13. Castles in the Air. Laurie lay luxuriously swinging to and fro in his hammock one warm September afternoon, wondering what his neighbors were about, but too lazy to go and find out. He was in one of his moods, for the day had been both unprofitable and unsatisfactory, and he was wishing he could live it over again. The hot weather made him indolent, and he had shirked his duties, tried Mr. Brooks' patience to the utmost, displeased his grandfather by practicing half the afternoon, frightened the maid-servants half out of their wits by mischievously hinting that one of his dogs was going mad, and after high words with the stableman about some fancied neglect of his horse, he had flung himself into his hammock to fume over the stupidity of the world in general till the peace of the lovely day quieted him in spite of himself. Staring up into the green gloom of the horse-chestnut tree above him, he dreamed dreams of all sorts, and was just imagining himself tossing on the ocean in a voyage around the world when the sound of voices brought him ashore in a flash. Peeping through the niches of the hammock, he saw the Marches coming out as if bound on some expedition. "What in the world are those girls about now?" thought Laurie, opening his sleepy eyes to take a good look, for there was something rather peculiar in the appearance of his neighbors. Each wore a large flapping hat, a brown linen pouch slung over one shoulder, and carried a long staff. Meg had a cushion, Joe a book, Beth a basket, and Amy a portfolio. All walked quietly through the garden, out at the little back gate, and began to climb the hill that lay between the house and the river. "Well, that's cool," said Laurie to himself, "to have a picnic and never ask me. They can't be going in a boat, for they haven't got the key. Perhaps they forgot it. I'll take it to them and see what's going on." Though possessed of half a dozen hats, it took him some time to find one. Then there was a hunt for the key, which was at last discovered in his pocket, so that the girls were quite out of sight when he leaped the fence and ran after them. Taking the shortest way to the boathouse, he waited for them to appear, but no one came, and he went up the hill to take an observation. A grove of pines covered one part of it, and from the heart of this green spot came a clearer sound than the soft sighing of the pines or the drowsy chirp of the crickets. "Here's a landscape," thought Laurie, peeping through the bushes, and looking wide awake and good-natured already. It was rather a pretty little picture, for the sisters sat together in the shady nook, with sun and shadow flickering over them, the aromatic wind lifting their hair and cooling their hot cheeks, and all the little wood people going on with their affairs as if there were no strangers but old friends. Meg sat upon her cushion, sewing daintily with her white hands, and looking as fresh and sweet as a rose in her pink dress among the green. Beth was sorting the cones that lay thick under the hammock nearby, for she made pretty things of them. Amy was sketching a group of ferns, and Jo was knitting as she read aloud. A shadow passed over the boy's face as he watched them, feeling that he ought to go away, because uninvited, yet lingering, because home seemed very lonely, and this quiet party in the woods most attractive to his restless spirit. He stood so still that a squirrel, busy with its harvesting, ran down a pine close beside him, saw him suddenly, and skipped back, scolding so shrilly that Beth looked up, espied the wistful face behind the birches, and beckoned with a reassuring smile. "May I come in, please, or shall I be a bother?" he asked, advancing slowly. Meg lifted her eyebrows, but Jo scowled at her defiantly and said at once, "Of course you may. We should have asked you before, only we thought you wouldn't care for such a girls' game as this." "I always liked your games, but if Meg doesn't want me, I'll go away." "I've no objection. If you do something, it's against the rules to be idle here," replied Meg, gravely but graciously. "Much obliged. I'll do anything if you let me stop a bit, for it's as dull as the desert of Sahara down there. Shall I sew, read, comb, draw, or do all at once? Bring on your bears. I'm ready." And Laurie sat down with a submissive expression delightful to behold. "Finish the story while I set my heel," said Jo, handing him the book. "Yes'm." was the meek answer as he began, doing his best to prove his gratitude for the favor of an admission into the Busy Bee Society. The story was not a long one, and when it was finished, he ventured to ask a few questions as a reward of merit. "Please, ma'am, could I inquire if this highly instructive and charming institution is a new one?" "Would you tell him?" asked Meg of her sisters. "He'll laugh," said Amy warningly. "Who cares?" said Jo. "I guess he'll like it," added Beth. "Of course I shall. I give you my word I won't laugh. Tell away, Jo, and don't be afraid." "The idea of being afraid of you. Well, you see, we used to play Pilgrim's Progress, and we have been going on with it in earnest all winter and summer." "Yes, I know," said Laurie, nodding wisely. "Who told you?" demanded Jo. "Spirits." "No, I did. I wanted to amuse him one night when you were all away, and he was rather dismal. He did like it, so don't scold, Jo," said Beth meekly. "Oh, you can't keep a secret. Never mind. It saves trouble now." "Go on, please," said Laurie, as Jo became absorbed in her work, looking a trifle displeased. "Oh, didn't she tell about this new plan of ours? Well, we have tried not to waste our holiday, but each has had a task and worked at it with a will. The vacation is nearly over, the stints are all done, and we're ever so glad that we didn't dawdle." "Yes, I should think so," and Laurie thought regretful of his own idle ways. "Mother likes to have us out of doors as much as possible, so we bring our work here and have nice times. For the fun of it, we bring out things in these bags, wear the old hats, use poles to climb the hill, and play pilgrims as we used to do years ago. We call this hill the Delectable Mountain, for we can look far away and see the country where we hope to live sometime." Jo pointed, and Laurie sat up to examine, for though an opening in the woods, one could look across the wide blue river, the meadows on the other side, far over the outskirts of the great city, to the green hills that rose to meet the sky. The sun was low, and the heavens glowed with the splendor of an autumn sunset. Gold and purple clouds lay on the hilltops, and rising high into the ruddy light were silvery white peaks that shone like the airy spires of some celestial city. "Oh, how beautiful that is," said Laurie softly, for he was quick to see and feel beauty of any kind. "It's often so, and we like to watch it, for it is never the same, but always splendid," replied Amy, wishing she could paint it. "Jo talks about the country where we hope to live sometime. The real country, she means, with pigs and chickens and haymaking. It would be nice, but I wish the beautiful country up there was real, and we could ever go to it," said Beth musingly. "There is a lovelier country even than that, where we shall go by and by when we are good enough," answered Meg with her sweet voice. "It seems so long to wait, so hard to do. I want to fly away at once, as those swallows fly, and go in at that splendid gate." "You'll get there, Beth, sooner or later, no fear of that," said Jo. "I'm the one that will have to fight and work and climb and wait and maybe never get in after all." "You'll have me for company, if that's any comfort. I shall have to do a deal of traveling before I come inside of your celestial city. If I arrive late, you'll say a good word for me, won't you, Beth?" Something in the boy's face troubled his little friend, but she said cheerfully, with her quiet eyes on the changing clouds, "If people really want to go and really try all their lives, I think they will get in, for I don't believe there are any locks on that door or any guards at the gate. I always imagine it as it is in a picture, where the shining ones stretch out their hands to welcome poor Christian as he comes up from the river." "Wouldn't it be fun if all the castles in the air which we make could come true, and we could live in them?" said Jo after a little pause. "I've made such quantities it would be hard to choose which I'd have," said Laurie, lying flat and throwing cones at the squirrel who had betrayed him. "You'd have to take your favorite one. What is it?" asked Meg. If I tell you mine, will you tell yours?" "Yes, if the girls will too." "We will. Now, Laurie." After I'd seen as much of the world as I want to, I'd like to settle in Germany and have just as much music as I choose. I'm to be a famous musician myself, and all creation is to rush to hear me, and I'm never to be bothered about money or business, but I just enjoy myself and live for what I like. That's my favorite castle. What's yours, Meg?